How we doing, guys? Jay here from Just Technics. Here today we're going to be stripping down this beautiful 1210 Mark II, which has been recently purchased by my customer. Purchased the turntable, is experiencing a few issues, wants me to look over it for him, service, audio cables, power cable, and all the usual bits that I'd normally do. So this is a Technics SL1210 Mark II. Condition-wise, it's not too bad. It's going to clean up rather well indeed, I would have thought. Straight off the bat, we've got things like audio cables that are massively too thick for the internals of the arm. So I'm going to be putting money on betting the fact that the support plastic bracket underneath the chop block's been removed. Cable on this, the power cable, is just insanely thick. I mean, look at how thick this is, guys. That's like an IEC kettle cable, kettle connection. I'm interested to see what this looks like inside. But the first thing we're going to do, before I even rip anything apart, let's turn this turntable on. It's all plugged in and see what we're working with. Bearing in mind, before I do so, my customer wants all of the LEDs back to standard on this. So we're going to pop a nice warm white SMD pop-up in this unit. Green LED, obviously, red 33, 45 and strobe, and whatever else is needed to get this back up to scratch. So let's turn this on and see what we're working with. So we've got extremely bright, bloody hell, extremely bright pitch control LED, which is actually a clear LED on this. The pitch trim is also bent because the LED has not been popped into position properly. I don't know if you can make that out on the camera, but I'll show you close up after I've taken everything apart. So the trim needs replacing, LEDs need replacing. Looks as if the slider unit has been removed at some point and the ball bearing has been taken out, but the spring has been kept in place. If you listen to this, can you hear that? That's the spring. So basically you've got a ball bearing and spring that creates the click, the physical indent and click. The ball bearing's been taken out and the spring is still in place. You can hear that. It's very, very common. The pop-up on this, the actual LED that's been installed, is still illuminating even when popped down. So when the switch is engaged, that should turn off. Yeah, it doesn't. That needs looking at. 33 and 45 LEDs, obviously going to be replaced for red LEDs. The switches are not the best on these either, so new tactile switches. The LEDs within the strobe tower, let's just see if I can take, this is a newer unit, so I should better take the plastic cap off. Yeah, the LEDs within the tower, I don't know if you can make this out on the video, but we've got one side here, two of the LEDs are actually blue and the other two are red. So he's tried to mix the LEDs to produce a different outcome. So you've got a red and a blue output. The strobe tower also moves around. So either the plastic supports within the operation base have been snapped, bent back too much, or it just hasn't been fixed incorrectly. So I'm going to put money on either the brackets are bent or snapped clean off. This happens quite a lot. Okay. The arm assembly doesn't look too bad. Height adjuster ring barely moves, so I can guarantee that hasn't been touched. That's as far as it goes. It could even be because the cable is so thick. The audio cable is so thick underneath that by the way it bends, if you imagine the bottom arm of the base, the thicker your cable is, when you're trying to move the height down, it's going to compress the amount of resistance and room within the arm. So 9 times out of 10 with a thicker cable, you can't get the height adjuster ring down any further than usually about 2 on the height ring. That's possibly why the height adjuster ring will not go any further. The 1.5. I'm not going to force that. But the lock all seems to work on this. The arm itself doesn't, there's not really any looseness or anything in the arm. So obviously when I take the arm apart at some point, I'll just judge and see what state the bearings are in. But we're not going to do that on the video. But the entire turntable is going to be stripped so we can see what the internal condition is going to be like. So let's get this started. Let's unplug the turntable. We'll remove the platter. If the camera does shake, I do apologise, guys. It's just this is above my mobile workbench. Straight off the bat, the screws holding down the plastic cover, these are incorrect. These are going to be probably about 4 times longer than the screws that you're meant to have holding the bolts. Yep, these look like the base bolts, base screws even. These are way too long. Let's get my lamp a little bit closer. These screws are 3 times the size of what they should be, and we've got these screws all over the plastic cover. I usually do this using a small hand electronic screwdriver. We'll do this by hand with my plastic one as my other unit's on charge at the moment. So we'll get this cover off. Pop these in the parts bin. These obviously aren't going to be going back on. Straight off the bat here as well, if you look carefully, you see this area here, it should look darker on the camera. Can't actually see the camera, so you have to bear with me, but this area here should be a bit darker. The plastic here has started to bow. That's because of heat. We've got a heat issue there. Again, a very, very common issue. If you look on here, you'll see that it's not flush. That's coming off. Let's have a look at the internals. Now, I was told by my customer that he's removed an under-platter lighting kit from his turntable, so hence why this wire is obviously here. This cable and wiring goes underneath the pitch, so there must be an LED strip still in place on this. He didn't like the under-platter lighting, so he's taken it off, and by the looks of it, he's insulated around either the connector or the bullet connector, it looks like on here. So that's why he's done it. It doesn't make any difference, to be fair, as nothing is live on this connector. It would have been fed for a power supply. Let's have a look and if I can get this off. See what we've got. Oh, okay. Well, that's been heat shrinked anyway, so I don't understand what's going on with that. My customer's obviously put the insulation tape on, but that looks like it's already been... It's got heat shrink around it. Ah, no, there's a bullet connector. It's a push-on flat connector. Okay, right. That's why that's there. Power cable looks horrific, so I'm going to cut this because we're not going to be using any of this, but the soldering... Holy God, I don't want to lift this to the camera. Look at the soldering, guys, for the power cable. That is terrible. That is absolutely terrible. Let's cut all this off and remove this from the turntable. Let's do this as close to the terminal as possible on both of these. I'm going to redo all of this. The cable tie holding this in is just ridiculous. That's way too thick. Obviously this is all going to be removed and a new power cable. Take the sleeving off of this. Absolutely stupid. Let's get that plastic removed. In fact, no, we won't. We'll leave that in because I'm going to change that plate anyway. That's the old school style plate. That needs to be rehoused. And the hole needs to be made bigger with a stepper drill. Make the hole a bigger diameter so we can get a better grub screw in there. So for the time being, we're just going to take this out. As much as I like doing these videos, I haven't got an absolute ton of man hours spare to do this. So if we look at this, look. Ooh, dearie. So it is an IEC cable. You can see the grounding point there. Or the earth even. Same thing. So he's got an IEC cable. Cut the earth. And wired these two in separately. The way it's been done, considering how tight these cables will be within the plastic connector, I'll be very surprised if that's not damaged inside there. I see this all the time where actually the plastic from the bung will eat into that. In fact, I don't know if you can see this on the camera as well. You see this little flappy bit of plastic? That's what actually holds the other end of the chop block there. Once that comes off, the whole thing will fly up. So this, as far as I'm concerned, is going straight in the bin. We might salvage the actual plug itself, because they always come in handy for my customers, but everything else goes in the bin. If you see the top of my hat or anything on there, guys, I do apologise. I'm kind of doing this off the cuff, really. I wasn't planning on doing a video. I'm very gentle with the connector and the pitch. I don't know what's going on with the thermal paste on the top of this regulator, but that looks terrible. That's massively overkill. Right, That's the first step. Let's take the plastic cap off for the pitch knob. The underfelt's in better days. That's all going to be replaced with new units. Lever lift. Let's take the lift itself. Off the turntable. There we go. Being careful not to lose the spring. Lock that back down. Take the rear weight off the arm. That's everything off of there. Everything off of here. We'll pop that later. Right. Okay. Next step. Let's get this turntable upside down. So, move a few things around. Again, if the camera moves, I do apologise. This is an off-the-cuff video. I wasn't planning on doing this. But let's get let's get the old foam. I've got 3 or 4 really good quality foams. This is my old foam cutout. A lot of people have been asking me where I bought this from. I've had it for years. It wasn't the cheapest thing actually. I paid about 50 quid for this. I've got another one here that's in a million bits that was donated by a customer. But I tend to stay away from that now. I don't really use it, but when I've got grubby old turntables, they do tend to get used. So right, that's that one. That's the feet off the turntable. That's that. We've then got the 4 longer screws that hold in the base. That's not even doing up or loosening to that matter. There we go. That's going to be, the actual threads are going to be cracked on the plastic for the operation base. That's standard on a lot of these I tend to find now. 2, 3. Bit better, we've got the lamp there. And 4. We've then got the 6 surrounding longer screws around the edge. So 1, 2, 3, 4. These are shockingly loose. 5, 6. Literally no effort involved at all undoing these. They don't even seem very tight. And we've got 11 screws. Support just to screw the actual rubber base down to the weighted section. Again, these just not even tight. These are just wiggle loose after a bit of vibration. So I'm quite glad this has come to me, to be fair. I do get really annoyed with some of these people that sell these decks because, well, to me, this isn't up to scratch from the word go, really. I mean, it's not in the best of condition as far as the under-platter lighting, the power cable, audio cable. If you're operating a business and you're trying to sell this to somebody as a serviced unit, all ready to rock and roll, best advice I would give is stop. Because yes, look, I'm grateful it keeps me in business, guys, having to repair turntables like this, and I thoroughly enjoy what I do, but I feel sorry, like I tell everybody, I feel sorry for my customers having to buy these units, pay good money for this as well. Let's get this off. Right, let's get the base. Where shall I put that? Let's put it up here. Just behind the camera, hence why it's shaking a bit. Right, let's undo the screws for the weighted section. There's also 2 screws that hold on the plates for the sockets. And what I tend to do with them is if the plates are not aligned correctly, i.e. they're not sitting flush with the rest of the unit, I'll obviously loosen them and tighten them back up. But as I'm going to be stripping the entire unit down, when I get round to it, these are all going to be taken off, deep cleaned, and start from scratch. So I'm not going to go down that route with this video. I'm just going to screw here. I always do that. Doesn't matter how many times I do this. That's always the last one. Lovely. Okay, that's weighted section now. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Brilliant. Off we go. Okay, so we can already see the underplatter. We're under pitch lighting. Stop this camera from moving. Sorry, everybody. This cable, I'll show you in a second as to why you shouldn't use thick cables like this. All of the felt ties are still in place. Some loose cable tie here. I don't know what's going on with that. It must have come off from underneath his little wire here. We'll leave that like that for the minute because that's all going to be taken out. Pitch control. That's not even, look how loose that is. So 1, 2. Out comes the pitch. We've got an LED strip stuck down with double-sided foam tape. Not very strong tape. Just the spring in the actual pitch. That's not very good. Well, either way, it's going to have a new unit. LED is going to be changed over. New potentiometer, new pitch. All deep cleaned. That can go in the bin, along with these 2 plastic tabs. Let's get the pop-up out, shall we? So 1 screw. 2 screws. Lift this out of the unit. Okay, that's got a large LED. Oh, dearie, dearie, dearie. That's an interesting one. Don't know if you can make this out on the camera, but it looks like the screw. He must have cross-threaded the screw and couldn't get it out. He's drilled the housing. He's drilled the housing to get the screw out. And the screw, the actual thread for the end, is still within the tower itself. Unfortunately for my customer, he's churned all the way around that. Needs a new tower, or tower insert, which luckily I have plenty of them, but that is not good. This is all, I'll say it's original. It's not, the wiring and everything's all original, still in place in the original way. That's the original resistor still there. And I think, oh God, that is awful. See the wiring coming through, it's probably shorting. Very, very important that you get these installed correctly. You can cause all heaps of problems. And that LED is just too big. You see, he's probably looking at like the Mark V for an example without the bigger LED. You pop a smaller LED on and you bend the housing like so, like that with cheaper LED kits, so that the LED output goes through the housing. That's all going to be changed. Okay, that's another thing to add to the list of bits. Let's take the operation base out. We'll do this so you can see it. Move the camera across and my lamp out of the way just a little bit. So the screws that hold on the operation base so far are the correct length. In fact, I go as far as saying that a lot of this hasn't been touched. I think when he changed the LEDs over on this, he kept everything in place as far as the operation base is concerned, because even the cable tie holding everything on here, there we go. It's very tight. Right, okay, let's get the switch out. Make sure the switch threads are not damaged. No, that's good. Lift the unit out. So these LEDs have been replaced. If you look on here, there's 2 little prongs here, or 2 legs even. One there, one there, one there, one here. They're your LEDs, 33 and 45. Or sorry, 33, 45, because we're looking at the upside down. These are your switches or your tactile switches. So one here with 4 legs. Nothing appears to be broken on this. If I look at the tower again, I bet that whole thing lifts out. Yeah, I was absolutely right. So the plastic that holds on the tower itself, the window section, you've got 2 little recessed parts, one either side of the window. And these little plastic prongs on the actual operation base itself, there's one here, and there should be one over here. That snapped clean off. So he hasn't tried to take this out carefully. He's just simply snapped it. He's twisted it around. This is what makes me laugh. A lot of some of these videos I see where people are trying to remove these. They advise you to simply twist and lift. If you twist and lift that off, that's what happens if you're not careful. You also buckle the plastic stems. This one is a classic example. If you look at this straight on, you'll see that it's sitting at an angle. It's because it's bent. If I try to bend that back, there's a very high chance that's going to snap. Now, I can fix this back in place using adhesive, but I don't want to be doing that really. That's a bodge as far as I'm concerned. This needs replacing. So the operation base needs replacing on this turntable. The strobe tower is okay. And we can obviously salvage everything else on this arm. The new tactile switches are definitely needed. This is why you've got to be very careful when buying them with so-called custom work being completed, because you just do not know what you're getting. With the underlight kit for the pitch, this person's obviously removed the shader cloth, the shading cloth even underneath the pitch, stops any dirt and debris getting in. You can buy shading cloths now which actually sit on top of the pitch units before you screw them back onto the deck. So if you look at this for an example, obviously he's mounted the LED strip on top, which is absolutely fine. But you can buy shading cloths that sit underneath the plate on top of the slider itself. It stops anything from getting inside the unit. Very, very important that you do this. If you don't do that over periods of time, see all this dirt here? That'll all be going inside the slider. So that's why you want to be using something like that. Right. Let's get the plate off the back of the arm. Normally, I'd be stripping everything down and doing the arms separately, but because I haven't got a great deal of time here, guys, I'm going to do this while it's still within the deck. Now, the first thing to bear in mind with this is this plate is on the wrong way around. It's on at the wrong angle. This section here, I'll show you in a second, is on at the wrong angle. So, yep, I'm absolutely spot on again. Plastic support underneath the top cover is missing, and he's also cut this round. That's purely because the cable is too thick. So that's going to have to be replaced. To make things a little bit easier, I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to cut the cables, because we're not going to be using this ever again. That is a chunky cable, that. And the grounding cable is just as thick. To give you an idea of how thick this is meant to be, let me just quickly grab a block. Support block. This is another turntable where I removed one from where the inner section was removed. You'll see how it's all bent outwards. So when they clamp it down, all of the flaps all bend out on either side. But that's the size of the diameter of the hole for your cables and your grounding cable. To give you an idea of this, if you look here, one cable with a tiny bit of room, you're not going to get both cables in there, and you sure as hell ain't going to get your grounding cable as well as the audio cables in that hole. Hence why the other one's been cut. So this is why you do not install cables that are too thick. It doesn't matter what brand they are. It doesn't matter how good the shielding is. You can buy really good quality cables which are the correct diameter to fit within your turntable. This is going in the bin. There we go. Let's get this plate off. So we've got 2 screws holding in the top plate. They get taken off. Popped in the parts. The plate is actually meant to go that way. So when the base is back on, the cables are going out of the deck like that. It's going to go up and out at an angle. The other problem that you've got, if you look at this plate, this will eat into the cable. Bloody hell. Right, okay. So let's remove the arm. Again, the screws are not the tightest on these. I don't know what he used to tighten these up. But he didn't put a lot of force or strength into these to get these done up correctly, these screws. But this loose, they're all going to come out really easily. That's sticking there in place. Normally that falls straight through. Look, there we go. Right. Massive cable tie on this one. Ironically, yes, it's not great, but that's not the worst I've actually seen soldering wise. Nothing else is touching, no legs are touching. I say quite bad, that's extremely bad on the arm wire. So the negative terminal for the right hand side connection's not exactly very well. In fact, that's been soldered onto the same point as the tone arm wire. So I'm going to put money on this that pad is not there underneath. It would have been ripped away because you do not do it that close. So yeah, that's all going to come off and all be removed. There's no looseness in the arm. Obviously we haven't checked that during the video, but just to give you an idea of this as well, with this plate on, you see how the cable, the angle that's bending up, and you've got that plate underneath. Now the plate's been removed. You can see now I can get the height to its 0 position. I'm not trying to force anything. It's moving down as it should. It's proof in the pudding that when you put thick cables on, you cannot move the height down. So at least now we know that the height and the threads are actually fully working on this. The lock's fully working, engaging as well. Anti-skate, you probably can't see this on the video, guys, but the anti-skate is working. That's still in factory position. I don't think he's even stripped the arm down. I think he's just changed the cable over. Oh well, that's all good. It's all good for me. It means there's less hassle as far as, you know, trying to trace any other independent issues. It's still going to be stripped down regardless, but it's a little bit of peace of mind for myself. The spindle hasn't been oiled at all. That is all original. It's all gunged up inside, but this is all standard. The worst part of this is the thermal paste. Now, I don't know if you can make this out again on the camera, but this is spewing with thermal paste all around the actual bottom of where the unit screws down onto the board. So what I'm actually going to do, get an old cloth with some alcohol cleaner, bear with me. Old cloth with some alcohol cleaner on standby. Plate for the arm can go up here. We're going to undo each screw straight onto there, because sod's law there's probably going to be thermal paste, but we don't need it, and it is awful stuff, thermal paste. It gets everywhere and it is a bloody nightmare. So those screws are okay, we can pop them in the parts. Just an old cloth to clean this. Doesn't matter too much about anything getting on the board because it's all going to be deep cleaned anyway. So for those of you that are watching and going, oh, it doesn't take much care doing that. No, the whole thing's going to be stripped. Makes no difference to me if anything gets anywhere. It all gets air blowed out as well. Just want to get the thermal paste off of the unit itself. Right, that's that. So the top clamp. Then we've got the actual regulator at the top of the board. Oh, lovely. Just a quick wipe over. I'll more than likely change this over as well, including the wiring. Nothing wrong with it, I would imagine, but we'll do the value checks on the unit. I'll desolder it from the board, obviously not on this video, and we'll clean the plinth, or the thermal paste off the plinth once the board is out. But there is, you can see, even doing this carefully, that cloth had no thermal paste on it at all before I started. It's already small parts on the gloves. 2 screws that hold the main support down for the motor itself. Very handy tip for you as well. If you buy turntables at later times, there's a very high chance, unless you bought them both at the same time from new or second hand and they've been owned from new, that the screws, the actual threads, could be slightly different sizes. So you have some of the threads on these that can be small, slightly spaced closer together. If you get them mixed up and you try to screw these in, you'll find that some of them are very tight, some of them go straight in, but it's very, very important because they're also different heights as well. So if you have two of these and you're ever planning on removing your spindle to physically strip the whole thing down and give it a good old clean and re-lubricate it with graphite as well, then make sure that you label or put them in separate little storage tubs which screws are with which plinth. If you don't do that, well, I mean, realistically, you'll know trying to screw it in if it's the wrong screws, but it's nice being organised, isn't it, eh? Okay. So none of this has been touched. This is all original. So the fuse board, transformer, main board, that's all original. It's all matching together. So in other words, the transformer, the fuse board and the main board all go together. So it's not a cut and shut or a Frankendeck in that respect. So it's not a board from another turntable. But there's nothing to say that this board and transformer unit wasn't taken from another turntable. That's the only problem with this. I had a lot of flack online from people about the Frankendeck video and the whole fake Technics thing. I just don't want people getting ripped off. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That has never been touched. I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but at the bottom, it's all grime and nastiness all built up on that, so that needs fully stripping down. It still moves smoothly. That's all going to be stripped, polished, and looking like new once I've got my mitts around all of this. What's that? Let's get the transformer screws out. So you've got two screws that hold down the transformer that are actually physically enclosed into the unit. You can take these out if you're very careful. These two screws, so this one and this one, you can keep them in the unit when you lift it out. This third one here, which is closest to the fuse board, comes out completely. And then move the switch and you can lift the whole thing out. Now sometimes, depending on how long this has been sitting, they can be a royal pain to get out. So what I would suggest is if you try moving this and something's got underneath it, grab yourself like a plastic spatula, get it underneath and give it a slight little push and a wiggle at the same time, and the whole thing will lift up. Sometimes with these, this grommet underneath the transformer, they do come out. So you'll have to remove the screw, the plate will have to come off, and you put the rubber back in. It's a very simple thing to do if it does come out. I'll leave that there for a second. Just want a quick look at the back of the board. I've got a funny feeling none of this has been touched. Yeah, that's just completely original. None of this has been touched. Nothing's been reflowed. Diodes haven't been changed. Resistor hasn't, or two resistors haven't been changed for the LEDs. That's why they're so bright. Original pots. There's nothing wrong with these as long as they've been cleaned. Yeah, that hasn't been touched. Again, good for me because I know nothing's been touched and I can crack on with no issues whatsoever. Let's get that to one side. Sorry, the camera's probably going to shake again. My alcohol on the wipe should still be here, so unless it's evaporated, I'll put a little bit more. Give me a second. Just a little bit more alcohol on this wipe. Once I've done all of this, and go in the bin. This is nasty stuff, this. Honestly, if you get this on your clothes, if you don't get this off and stick it straight in the wash, it gets everywhere. Trust me, I know. 3 to 4 of these, 3 to 4 pairs of these every week. Just want to get a little bit of that off. I'm going to fully strip down this plinth. Make my life a bit easier. Right, that cloth can go to one side for later for when I go around all of this again. But no, so the pitch trim, that isn't the best at all. It's bent. As you can see around the LED, where the housing goes for it, it's not sitting flush because When it's put it back in, the LED's hitting the side of the trim and it's bending the plastic, the actual trim itself. I'm out of a very thin sheet alloy, and they stick down. It's a bit unfortunate because that's the original trim as well. I mean, it is very heavily worn, so it's got to be changed over. But there we go, guys. So that is one stripped down 1210 Mark II. Obviously, I've gone over a few helpful things for you. So do not install cables that are too thick, because like I've said, if they're too thick, you will not be able to use the entire length of the height adjuster ring. And the truth is, you do not need a cable that thick. It doesn't matter if it's a QED cable, a Cambridge Audio cable, a Van Dam cable. You can buy cables that are the correct diameter. If you are wanting to install your own cables and you are skilled enough to do so and competent enough to do so, you can replace the PCB, carefully desolder the wires. These need replacing, to be fair. They're all bent or burnt even, especially the right-hand side negative channel. So this PCB needs to be replaced. But anyway, you can competently remove and replace these boards. If you would rather have an audio cable, instead of soldering the cable on yourself to a PCB, you can buy the cables pre-mounted onto the board. I can provide these if you're happy to do it yourself. At least this way, all you need to do is unscrew the pin, the connection that goes to the top of the pitch control where the grounding cable goes to. The bottom screw here. Whole thing will lift up once you've desoldered the arm wires. Pop the new one in with the cable, screw the top screw back on with this cable here, screw on the bottom, solder the wires back on, and you're away. So I can help you with this if need be. But do not put cables that are too thick on. That's way overkill for this board, for this turntable. You can buy them the correct diameter. But like I say, the tube itself doesn't look to be that bad. The socket as well is quite clean, or the internals. Very important that you keep these 4 spring-loaded connectors very clean. Otherwise, if they get covered in grime and grease and rave goo, again, you'll be running into more problems that you do not need. But these pivots are all going to be machine polished. Plastic section for the central part of the arm is going to be polished. Tube machine polished. The whole thing's going to be stripped down. So the socket cap machine polished. Socket head machine polished. Pins deep cleaned. Anti-escape system removed from internals and from the top, everything stripped down on the arm, and bearings obviously checked as well, just to make sure that we're okay with that. Otherwise the bearings are going to need to be replaced. Just going over each bit by bit. So that's the arm operation base. Like I said, the tactile switches, the 45 one particularly, is a bit snatchy. That needs to be replaced. We're going to replace both of these. LEDs are going to be replaced, and as long as not too much heat has been put onto this board and he hasn't broken the traces, then I can salvage the board, check the wiring. Same thing goes for the strobe tower, which shouldn't come straight off. The plastic operation base needs to be replaced. There is no way around that. You can even, in fact, I don't know if you picked up on this before, I've only just noticed this, but if you look here, you'll see where he's had his soldering on the end of this. He's actually partially burnt through the cable, and the negative cable, and also through the plastic that holds the operation base on. So regardless of whatever way you want it, that needs to be replaced anyway. You see how easy that just lifted out. Shouldn't be able to do this. There's just more things that get added onto the bill, unfortunately. That's the operation base. That's 2 things there. Back to the pop-up again. As you can all see from before, like I was explaining, the screw must have been cross-threaded or seized in place, and instead of gently popping a little bit of heat on there with a bit of penetrant oil and leaving it, the whole thing is just decided to drill through it. So he's drilled through that, removed the screw, lift the housing off, left it in place, so that still moves around. Terrible. LED, not bent. Wiring, terrible. Too much heat put onto the heat shrink as well, because the cable is actually still visible through here. No resistor in line on there at all, apart from the original resistor. That hasn't been touched. That's all factory. No wonder the thing's not switching off when you engage the switch. Once that's in that position, that should be turned off. It still illuminates. I think we found the reason why there, guys, as well. The spindle again, covered in rave goo underneath. That's never been touched. That's all going to be stripped down, deep cleaned, oiled, graphite and polished. Pitch control unit, like I've said, the spring is there, but the pitch control ball bearing is not. That's all going to be deep cleaned, stripped down, LED replaced. And again, as long as he hasn't completely burnt out the pads. There is a way of repairing these if you genuinely do not want to pay for a replacement board. I mean, they're not very expensive. Again, you can readily buy these over from djspares.com. If you search that, you'll find it. You can buy these replacement boards and you can just replace everything on them. But if these are that bad and you genuinely do not want to replace the board, you can put wires across to bridge the connections, excuse me, if the actual pads are not in the best condition. I do that to help some customers out if they really don't want to buy replacement boards, but it is the best thing to do is just replace everything on them if you're going to be going down that route. That's the pitch control. And then back to the plinth. So it's going to clean up very well indeed. I think once we get everything done on here, trim's got to come off, surround's going to come off, deep clean everything, get all this nasty thermal paste off, and just start from scratch with this. Get all these old felt tape pads that offer the turntable, clean all of this up, and start from scratch. And there we go. So that's another 1210 Mark II in the Just Technics HQ, ready to be worked on. Next step's going to be clean this plinth up and start on bits bit by bit and get this back to my customer. Hope this is helpful for those of you that have been wanting to know how to strip down a turntable. This is probably the shortest video I've done. I know it's about 40, nearly 50 minutes long, I probably would have imagined, but this is the good way of seeing what is needed to strip your turntable down to get your plinth in a position that can be given to a spray painter or a powder coater to get this reconditioned. So if you do, in fact, if you deal with people like my friend Sam over at Pimp My Decks, if you want to do an exchange, Sam offers a part exchange of his plinths. So he has pre-made plinths in different colours available on his website. You can take your plinth apart and send him your plinth. That will actually save you quite a bit of money as well, because he hasn't got to get the turntable. There's no risk in having things damaged or buying specialist boxes to stop them from getting damaged and securing the arm and everything else. And you can simply just send him your plinth. So this will save you a few quid as well. But also with this video shows you how to strip the turntable down, how to get into the turntable, how to take various components out. So if you are competent with soldering and you're quite happy to replace the pitch control, you know how to calibrate it correctly. There are various different ways to do so, bearing in mind that the service manual was all well and good, but that was never changed since 1979, guys. There's more than one setting for the pitch control, so don't just set it to 2.7K and think that's all you got to do. It's not as simple as that. It's a lot of time and effort goes into this, so bear that one in mind. Pop-up's a simple thing to do, but if you install it incorrectly, you can be in a world of pain. Where that connects to the top of the board, main feed in for the deck, bang. If you don't put a resistor on there, you don't do things correctly, you can blow components on the board. You can change the fuses over, turn the turntable back on. You're going to have a twitchy platter, a stuttery platter. You could have one-way speed issues. There's all different things that can be caused. But this is a helpful video for those of you that are interested in stripping your turntable down and get it to this component stage as well. Everything's all out, ready to go. And the next video you see on this one here should be, once the turntable is completed, back together, all the LEDs all refreshed, new pitch, platter polished, everything done and ready to go. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next video.